that makes sense, man. That's good. I appreciate you running those numbers.
That was months ago, right? Guess it doesn't count
Yeah.
if we just put them on speakerphone or
Well-
something, right?
But, yeah, that's possible, I guess.
Ag in the back of the.
I'm sure I can find her.
Well, listen, I
Deal,
pushed the
so
meeting
I
to
could-
from Friday to Monday, so
got an
we've got,
extra?
Yeah.
we've got time in the east, so don't think you gotta kill
Thank
yourself
you.
tomorrow to get it.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Or today, so,
Love
anyway.
these guys, love them.
I'm trying to say about my
I can't believe I left my big ass bag. I carry that big ass bag everywhere.
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it. Okay, safe flight. Okay, bye.
So, then can I?
So one of you is gonna have to sit in as, cause,
Brush up on her
Rules.
skills.
I don't
She's-
know Robert's
she's so
rules
rusty.
anymore. I am very rusty, actually. I was gonna turn that over to you.
I'll nominate you. I'm retired.
Are you retiring? I'm only here till July, though.
I'm kidding.
this is just for today we're talking about for sitting here chair today, we'll have the election at the end.
I'm just teasing, whatever, if you want.
You
to
go
sit
ahead.
in,
You go
it doesn't
ahead.
matter. Okay. Are we waiting on Joe?
No, we're just gonna, if he calls.
All right, well, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order then for Thursday, November 7th, Tennessee Athletic Commission. Could we get a roll call?
Oh, I think it's Joe calling in right now. Joe. I'm just gonna try to put you on my speakerphone and turn the microphone toward it, see if we can get you that way, because we can't get the bridge line. Okay, hold on one second. Joe, try to talk and see if we can hear you.
I have better luck getting in touch with Barack Obama than I do getting in touch with the Athletic Commission.
We got you. We can hear you though.
Yeah, I hear you very well.
Can we turn this over to, and let the chairman run it, or?
Can you run the chairman right here?
Yeah,
Yes.
they can do it that way.
Joe, we're ready for you to begin the meeting. We're here.
Okay, well, I apologize that I can't be there. I could have come, but I got someplace I've got to be at 4:30, so my day's kind of crunched, so I apologize. Welcome everybody, and if you'll do roll call, then I'll kind of know who I'm talking to.
Okay. Commissioner Bast. Dr. Penn.
Present.
Commissioner Hanna.
Here.
And Chairman Smith.
Okay. It sounds like that we got a quorum. I tell you, just for the sake of maybe things being running smoother, if it's okay with those of you that are present, let me kind of turn the gavel maybe over to Steve or somebody that's there, and so you can kind of facilitate things from there, and it'll be a little less cumbersome than me trying to do it over the telephone. So at the risk of being out of order here, can I turn in terms of the responsibilities of chairing this meeting, can I turn that over to maybe Steve? Are you okay with that, Steve?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to help.
Okay. So that being said, carry on. I'm right here.
All right, it does appear that we do have a quorum, so if, and I think each of you have a copy of the minutes from the last meeting, so if you'll take just a few minutes and we'll take a motion or entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Commissioners, I left one thing out of the minutes that I'm going to have to put in there before we put it in the record, and that is the part of the legal report that Mr. Scudder put in last time, where he put it before the board. If you wanted to go forward with the incident where the man had put a complaint, and the commission voted that they did not want to go forward to have a hearing. They wanted to dismiss it because it was an official's call, and I left that out of the minutes, and I've got to put that in before we can put it online.
So, Mr. Scudder, by that, do we mean literally just writing it in, or?
Yeah, I will just write. I will add it, and if you guys can approve it without that, with my addition of that.
Yeah, subject to that addition.
Yeah.
Would be the motion.
Okay, we've got a motion from Commissioner Bass to approve the minutes contingent upon the notes that were reflected by Director Mullen, once those are inserted, is on the table. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion approved. All right, Mr. Mullen, we'll turn this over to you for the Executive Director's update.
All right, first thing I want to report about is the sunshine, the sunset committee meeting that we attended a few weeks ago. And, I want to commend all the commissioners here for all the great work they got preparing us for that. Commissioner Bass and Dr. Penn were both there in person and were really good with their presentations. Commissioner Bass had a PowerPoint presentation that was very impressive for the committee, and they had some medical questions, and Dr. Penn was right there on point with all the questions that they had about concussions and things like that. And I know Commissioner Hanna did a lot of things behind the scenes to help us with that, and we were granted another year to go forward. I didn't send you guys an email about it because I talked to each one of you individually on the phone if you weren't there about where we stood on that. But they gave us a year until July the 1st of 2015. So we got a lot of work to do between all there. And we're going to have a lot of things to discuss here about legislation going forward. And just talking a little bit about the past and upcoming fights that we've got.
Hey, Jeff,
yes.
Joe, let me interrupt you just a minute, if I may, before you go on, before you get away from the hearing. One thing that I would encourage all of us to be mindful of, because if we're not careful, we can at least come across this way with what I'm about to say, I'm afraid. Let's be careful that we all understand, I think we do, that our issue with our commission is not an expense issue. We have done everything that we could do to cut. And really the only thing left to cut is our executive director. We cut him, there's no program. So we've done a great job, in my opinion, of cutting expense. So what we got to be careful of is when we talk about what our problems have been and what they are, that we be ever mindful that it continues to be a revenue issue, not an expense issue. Because some feedback that I got from at least one committee member is that they felt like that maybe that we were maybe passing some blame, and so let's just be careful that we don't blame anybody. It's not anybody's fault that we're at this point. It's not anybody's fault that was previous to before any of us got involved with the commission, or it's not the FNA's fault or anybody's fault. It just is what it is. And we've got to create revenue. So just wanted to say that out loud. Let's just be careful how we articulate why we're where we're at.
Yes,
Okay?
sir. I agree. All right, thank you, Joe. Going forward here with past events, we had a Mid-South boxing event at the New Daisy on October the 11th, and it was a very small show, only a few fights, but they were very competitive fights, a lot more competitive than the ones they've had in the past. And then we had a XFC MMA show here at Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, and it was shown on Access TV, on high definition TV, and they had some great fights there. It looked really good on TV. They did not have a big crowd there, so it won't be much more than the minimum gate, but it was a really good fight. Then last weekend we had fights in Pigeon Forge, 3FC. It does a great job there. Again, they had some really good fights, and they had a pretty good crowd, probably better than the XFC crowd, better than the televised crowd, but they do a really good job in Pigeon Forge, and that will be a little bit over the minimum amount. We've got a fight coming up next week at Elizabethton, far end of the state, by the Tri-Cities, the Tri-City Thunder. And 3FC actually puts that on, matches it for the event there, but the arena is actually the promoter of that event. The following week, we have Pound for Pound Boxing coming back to Nashville, and they actually do their shows at their gym. It's a small show, but it's a good show. Keeps boxing going here in Nashville. And what they're going to do this time that they haven't done in the past is the undercard, they're going to have amateur kickboxing as an undercard, and the main card, they're going to have professional boxing. And Bernard Robinson, who is the promoter, he was a kickboxing professional champion for years, and then he went on to be a professional boxer after that. So he's very familiar with both sports, and he's going to be the first time we've had a boxing kickboxing card here, so that's going to be good coming up, and he's going to try to kind of revive the kickboxing.
You coming out of retirement on that one?
No, I'm too old.
Come on.
I'll be there watching. Sometimes I think I can. And that will, and that's the end of my report.
Hey, Jeff, the UFC was in Clarksville.
It was it's at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And they decided Kentucky was going to regulate it because the post office address of Fort Campbell is a Kentucky address. That's where the post office is. Even though most of the base is in Tennessee.
Yeah.
But there weren't any taxes involved, like gate receipts or anything, because it was federal land. So it was,
Man, how did we miss that? Was that planned? I mean, it just seems like that thing came from nowhere. Like,
yep. They called me about it a few weeks ago, and they said, Jeff, this is, their post office address is Kentucky. We feel like regulated. And so I went down there last night. I went down there for the last.
into that, or am I just coincidence, or was there any kind of agenda in your would keep them from wanting to work with?
Oh, no. No, actually, at one point, there was a chance they were coming here because of the federal shutdown. When they were saying that federal shutdown kept going, they called me right at the end of that, and they said the federal shutdown keeps going. We want to move to Nashville. I said, great, whatever it takes, we'll get it done in the time you need. But then, the federal shutdown ended, shortly, like a few days after they called me. And so they didn't go any further. Actually talked about maybe having the weigh-in here for a while, but they couldn't work it out, so Kentucky must not have wanted to make it a joint venture.
Is it a packed house?
Yeah, it was all servicemen that got in for free. So actually, there was no gate.
Okay. So the
Yeah.
public necessarily wasn't?
No, public wasn't there at all. It was all servicemen that got in for free.
Okay. All right, sorry, I was just curious. That came from nowhere. Anything else?
No, that's it, yeah.
I have a question.
How has the new DCs been going? Have they been going a lot more smooth?
Well, the last one was a different promoter. It was Damien from California, and he went in partnership with Malcolm. And Damien is the one that actually did all the stuff ahead of time. Now, we had a couple of problems with it, but it did go much smoother, and he actually made the matches a lot better. The matches were a lot more. And Damien, all these fights, every one of the fights went the distance instead of like first round knockouts. They were much more competitive fights, but he had smaller crowds than Malcolm's been having. So I don't know how much longer he's going to want to do that. They were good fights, better fights. Yeah.
So when we were at the sunset hearing, we identified some things that we could change immediately without rules changes or votes, I thought, which was like an increase in the gate fee
Event
or?
permit.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we doing that now with any other fight upcoming?
What we've got to do is we have to set a rules meeting, and even though we don't have to do it in legislation, we have to do it in a rules meeting, and it still has to go before the
This can't be a
legislature.
rules meeting because it has to be announced ahead
It
of
has to
time.
be a special rules meeting.
But it can be one of our meetings, so for example, like the
Right,
next one.
yeah, it could be the same day as a regular meeting.
Okay, thank you.
But there's a couple of things. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, right? When you-
All right,
Yeah, I think
okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Director Mullen. At this point, we'll now turn it over to Mr. Scudder for our legal report update.
I don't have any complaints. I don't have any complaints to present to y'all this time. And my recommendation is the best way to proceed on the rules is for us to go ahead and pick a date. And I think probably March, sometime in March would be ideal for us to go ahead and just set a rulemaking hearing which will coincide with the Athletic Commission meeting. And those would be permanent rules. And if we've got a date, we should be able to go ahead and move on those faster. The way that things are being channeled now, the General Counsel is getting involved in sending things to the Attorney General's office. And so that if we put a date on it, if we say we need this by a certain time, I think that'll help us get things moving quicker. So I think the fastest thing, the best way we can do it is March. It has to be at least 50 days in the future. Like if we were going to do it today, it'd have to be at least 50 days into the future.
From today.
From today. It has to be publicized on the Secretary of State's website for at least 50 days. So I figure if we add a month for it to go through all the places that it has to go through, the end of February or the 1st of March will be enough time for all those folks to look at it and not put an unreasonable deadline on them. Because if we go too short, if we don't give them enough time, they can say, "Oh, you're not being reasonable," and kick it back on that basis.
Well, we have to set a calendar today. That's under new business, and I was going to suggest that instead of January, April, July, and October that we've always done in the past, that we do February, May, August, and October, so that we don't end up, where we never can get a quorum in July in those summer months. So I was going to suggest that. So if we do it in February, you think we get it done by February, the rules meeting?
I believe so. We would probably ideally do it towards the end of February,
Right.
but I think February
And
is
the earlier we can do that, the better.
Can you repeat the months you just suggested?
Um,
You said we usually do
We used to
January,
do
April,
January,
July.
April, July, and October. That's what we've done in the past. But in July, we always end up having to postpone that July meeting and put it to August because we never can get a quorum in July. So I was thinking if we did February, because this is already November now anyway. If we did January, that's only 2 months from now. So if we did February, that's 3 months from now, and then May, and August, and November, we would be kind of on the same schedule that we are right this minute. This is November now.
Sounds good. And Commissioner Bass and I were just talking, though, that some of the positions will be changing. So hopefully you'd have new members, since 2 of us will be leaving in July. So that means we'd only be at 2 more
Actually,
meetings.
3 people are leaving, I believe. I think everybody's coming off but Steve, I think.
Joe, when do you,
Joe, when does your term expire?
I want to say 2015. I'm pretty sure I'm right.
That's what the Secretary of State has. They've got
Yeah.
it posted, and they've got it 6/30/2015.
Yeah, yeah.
And so 2 people are coming off this summer?
Let's see.
And Steve is still on? Joe is still on?
Let's see. I've got Commissioner Hanna coming off June 30th, 2014.
So Commissioner Hannah's coming off.
That's what I've got on here. Now, I've found some errors in this.
Yeah.
In another board that I work on, and they've got some of the dates wrong, and so this may not be accurate, but at
Because
least
he
that's
had
what
a-
the Secretary of State's
Steve
got.
had a reappointment. I don't know if it was after 2 years or after.
is it us two, Mr. Scott? Me and Dr. Pennis, coming off July, June 30th, 2014?
Let's say Dr. Penn comes off June 30th, and they haven't posted your term on there yet. The last time I checked it.
So if we move those dates, then we would be only attending 2 more meetings instead of, well, no, 2 either way if it's June 30th. I thought it was July, but, okay, so we just have to have new people by August. So just to keep that in mind.
Dr. Brody's resume was submitted to the governor's office, and was that?
What's the latest rule? Is we got 4 years and that's it?
Yeah.
Can't be
Well,
reappointed?
If you are certain for the 4-year term, then you have to take a year off before you can resubmit yourself. Because you were only appointed a year to 2 years to 3 years, and then you got reappointed, reapplied. I think you got,
Commissioner Hannah was reappointed, Commissioner Smith was reappointed,
Because y'all-
or Chairman Smith.
Y'all didn't have 4-year terms initially,
Right.
so you could do that.
Gotcha.
Oh, if I'm not mistaken, what
She
was
wasn't
your?
one of the original ones, she came on as a
Yep.
4-year.
I'd have to take a year off.
You have to
Yeah.
take a year off.
Mhm.
Commissioner Bass would take a year.
Well, okay. So back to the matter, which is, and Mr. Scudder, you said that we could coincide this rulemaking.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And, it could be depending on how many people want to speak on the rules. The last time we did one, nobody showed up, and we were through pretty quickly. So unless a lot of people come and they have statements that they want to make, it shouldn't be that long a process. It shouldn't be.
I think we'll have quite a few
Hour.
people show up for the amateur rules.
Okay.
I think we will have some feedback from the public. I know there's people very interested in that coming up,
Okay.
because some people think some of the things. Have a lot of people show up.
It ought to be fun.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking is we may want to go a little earlier than 1 o'clock If we could, if it's gonna be a long drawn out thing like the executive director says, we may want to start a little earlier than we traditionally do.
So do we need to take a motion for, or is this, do we want to talk about this in new business, or when do you think this would be most appropriate to discuss?
Well, I think it probably would be best to get a motion for me to go ahead and proceed with. Y'all have already approved me to do
We need
emergency
we need
rules.
to set the calendar first, though, before we set that date.
Yeah,
though.
okay,
So
yeah.
The calendar was gonna be a new rule, a new business. Do you wanna set the calendar now so we can go forward with that? Let's set the
Let's go,
calendar.
yeah, let's move on. So,
So February would be the earliest we could do it, but he said late February. Normally we do it the first Thursday of the month, but do you want to try the third or fourth Thursday of the month instead of the first, so we could give them time?
I think that'd be ideal.
February 20th or February 27th?
Either one of those dates would work well for Joe Smith.
Thank you, Joe.
say it again, February what?
Either 20th or 27th, whichever is better for the commissioners.
Those both work for myself.
Would later be better, Ed?
The 27th would be ideal for me, but I don't want to.
Is 27th good for? Yeah. Let's set February 27th as the first meeting. And then that would put us in May for the next meeting. The first Thursday is the first. We could do the first or the 8th, whichever is first or the 8th. May, yes, of May 1st or May 8th.
The first would work better for me for what it's worth.
Joe, how are you on the May 1st and May 8th?
It looks like either one of those dates are okay. Either one, doesn't matter.
May 1st? And then that would put us,
That's fine.
that would put us in August for the next meeting. And actually, Joe, you'd be the only one left for the August meeting. Is August 7th okay for you?
That'll work fine.
Okay, put down August 7th.
Now, make sure I understood, Jeff, is everybody rolling off?
Everybody but you, it looks like.
Well, is there something we can do for some of these guys to get reappointed if they desire to be?
Well, the statute says they have to sit out a year. And actually, before it said 2 years. But when they when they amended the rule, now it's 1 year sitting off. Is that correct, Commissioner Bass? Yeah. Originally it was 2 years, but now you just have to sit off for 1 year.
I got you.
So, Joe, is November 6th good for you? Do you know this far ahead of time, a year ahead of time?
Well, I mean, it looks good right now, Jeff. Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, that's what I'm going to put down. So we have set our calendar as February 27th, May 1st, August 7th, and November 6th. So
Okay, looks good.
that'll be the first Thursday of each month, other than February, where we had to go late to make sure we could get the rules moving
Okay.
on.
And along the lines of Mr. Scudder's recommendation, I would assume that these would all start at 1 o'clock with the exception of the meeting that
Yes.
is scheduled in February, which, what do y'all think about moving that to like 11, or what do we?
I think 11's good. I think we getting earlier than 11 will be hard for people traveling in. So,
Does that work for everybody?
I'll already be here, so I'll be here that week because of session.
So are they scheduled as separate? For example, the rules meeting will be at 11, the athletic commission will be at 1. Like, is that how it has to be set up?
That's the way it usually is set up, but we do need to have a quorum for the rules meeting. We can't I can't just do it by myself in a room.
rules meeting at 11, and 1 o'clock for athletic commission meeting.
But both on that same day, obviously.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
But
That'd be
can
fine with
you
me.
confirm that 1 or 2 years? I thought it was 2 years too.
Yeah, confirm
Okay,
that as well. I think mine.
I'll double check and see what I can find out. This is something that I printed off a while back.
I think you're talking about how long you have to set out, right?
Oh, how long you have to sit out? Now that is 1 year. Now I've got that right here in front of me.
But it was originally 2, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then, okay. I don't know where this goes in our agenda because then we were just talking about other names, so we could go ahead and submit since obviously it takes several months.
Right.
But we can come back to that if we want to.
Commissioner Best, I think that was one of the suggestions you made was changing it from 2 to 1, which is really good to get. Right, we gotta get we need to get the good people back on.
Okay, so, we don't need to take a motion, do we, on those dates, or do we? Yeah,
The calendar.
Need 'em.
Don't we
All
need
right.
to accept
Oh.
the calendar?
How about the rules?
But if we could get a motion on the rules hearing, I'd appreciate that.
All right,
Calendar too. Yeah.
what's that? All right, so is there a motion to accept the dates that's been outlined, as well as including the rulemaking hearing for the February 27th
Seventh.
meeting?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to accept February 27th as a rules meeting at 11 a.m. and the calendar for 2014 for the Tennessee Athletic Commission.
Do we have a second? We have a second by Commissioner Bast. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, like sign. Motion passed. All right, anything else, Mr. Scudder?
No, sir, that's all I've got.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. We're now to the point of discussing any old business.
Can I make a suggestion, please? We've got some visitors here, and this is actually under new business, but it is old business because it's been coming for a while. But I thought maybe we could move this forward so that they don't have to wait a long time. We could go ahead and present this. As you and I discussed in the past, we had a amateur sanctioning body subcommittee when we had 9 people, so we had like a 3-person subcommittee. And we've had several sanctioning bodies apply to become sanctioning bodies recognized as the state of Tennessee. And as you and I discussed, since we're down to 5, I don't think maybe we could bypass the subcommittee part where we don't. You're the only member left on the subcommittee, actually, so you are the subcommittee. So rather than have a subcommittee and come before them and then present it to the commission, I was wondering if maybe we could just bypass that and go straight to submitting it to the commission today for the commission accepting a new amateur sanctioning body.
I think it's a great idea, just in the spirit of making best use of everybody's time. Is that okay with you folks? So let's, yeah.
The sanctioning body that has applied is Kick International, and we have 2 of the representatives here with us today. And they've been around for a long time. I believe they came about in 1982. And Frank Babcock is the president, and Chuck Norris was very involved in the beginning of the organization when they first started. Anthony Elmore from Memphis fought many times for Kick. I was actually a judge for Kick and a Kick representative way back in the days in the 80s. And they're an internationally recognized body, which is one of our requirements. And if you don't mind, there are 2 representatives here, Sean and Kevin. I would like to turn it over to them and let them tell you a little bit about the organization and what they're going to do. Frank Babcock is the president. Yes, ma'am.
Are the requirements for us, is it like 4 or 5 requirements, or is that hard? I just want to, before I listen to them say what they have, I want to make sure I know what our requirements are.
As far as,
Well, you just named that one is that they
Proving
have to be
unsanctioned.
international, so
Of how
Internationally
many
recognized.
sanctioning bodies we should approve, in other words, or have?
It's not said
What the
in,
sanctioning bodies have to, what guidelines they have to meet in order to be accepted.
I don't believe there are any criteria set out in the statute. Just
Because he just said they have to be international.
internationally recognized, I think is.
So are there any other
okay.
things like
I'll
that?
I'll check on that. I
Okay.
didn't know we were going to be discussing this
It
today. I'll
says,
look at it.
the only thing I remember it saying is they had to be internationally recognized.
All right, we got, gentlemen, if y'all want to introduce yourselves, just at the podium will be fine.
My name's Sean Hammond. Thanks for having me out, guys. I really appreciate it. They've chosen me to be the representative of the state of Tennessee. To promote international, but it's USAF, which is MMA portion of what they're trying to do. And what they're trying to do is
Mr. Hammonds?
Where do you get
Hey, Joe? Joe?
You have to stay late. It's a late day.
Hey, Joe? Hand me that phone. Hey, Joe?
Yeah.
Sorry, bud. Could you, would it be possible for you to mute you? There's some static coming in from your end, and it's,
Okay.
interrupt.
Let me, I'll hit the mute button now.
Oh, thank you, sir. Sorry, Mr. Hammonds.
once again, it's they're now introducing MMA. So what they're trying to do is so they're just trying to help to get like maybe trying to get mixed martial arts in the Olympics, and so they can come.
I've worked with Mr. Hammonds a lot. He's been a second in a lot of the fights that I've regulated, and I've seen him.
I can also speak, and I think it's common knowledge, living here in Nashville and having trained in mixed martial arts for over 10 years, Sean has a reputation that's pretty much impeccable, and he's as many shows as I know that Director Mullen's been a part of and represented the commission. Their whole operation is just first class. So, for what it's worth, I thought I'd share that as well.
Where are you based out of exactly? Where is Kick International based out?
St. Louis, yes.
Kick International, they also do professional fights. Yeah, they do professional fights also. Not the UMMAF, the amateur MMA, but Kick International. They've also promoted professional kickboxing for years. They're also the U.S. representative of the World Association of Kickboxing Organizations, which is a huge kickboxing organization in Europe. And Kick puts together the team for the U.S. to send there every year to fight, for the international championship. WACO, as it's called.
Dr. Penn or Chairman Smith, y'all have any other questions or concerns or?
I guess one question I would have just because
We did some legislation trying to make it more conducive for amateur organizations.
to take the next step to professional, just simply a lot of the stuff I see in West Tennessee, I'm seeing the same fighters, 20-some fighter. we've tried to do some legislation that is active for amateur folks to take it to the next level for their fighters. What is one reason you stay amateur and don't take it to the next level professionally?
It's funny because you have fighters that, some of them, they may never go pro. And then you have some, that's what they're looking to do. They fight amateur so they can get. I think there should be, 15 to 25 minimum, and the state should make. I'll see some of the same things, and I wonder why guys like, 25 and 17, and I'm like. Like my guys, they fight. We turned a kid pro, Kid Investment Ortiz, who is going to be fighting in the UFC this weekend, and we got him at 8-1 as a pro. He only had 7 or 8 AMI fights, and we knew he was ready for that next level.
So your organization is doing professional as well as amateur?
No, not the UMAF. The UMAF is not. It's a. We could use all the help.
I can't, Jeff, I'm missing some of the conversation. I think that maybe, I thought I heard somebody ask why are they continuing to stay amateur. Did I hear that question?
Yeah. Commissioner Bass was talking about how so many of these MMA fighters, they'll end up with 20 or 30 amateur fights and not going pro. And Sean Hammonds, who is giving a presentation right now, he said that they are encouraging their athletes when they are ready to be pro to go forward. They don't urge them to go too soon, but they don't drag them out like that. But what Commissioner Bass is talking about in West Tennessee, there's literally fighters that have 20 and 30 amateur fights and stay amateur, and of course, you always hear stories about maybe they're getting paid under the table by the promoters so they don't turn them pro, or another thing is a lot of people get paid separately to sell tickets, which isn't exactly illegal, but it's kind of like borderline. So they may make $1,000. They may make more than low-level pro fighters by selling a lot of tickets to the fights.
Well, and I would like to believe, and maybe what I'm about to say is a little naive, but I'd like to believe that some people stay amateur just because they're just doing the sport for fitness and conditioning, or it may be just because they enjoy it.
That's exactly what Mr. Hammond said. Yeah.
And if that's the case, that's absolutely okay. I mean, we'll have amateur boxers many times that'll have 300 and 400 amateur bouts and never turn pro.
Right.
So, that's okay.
Like Clint Jackson.
That's okay.
Clint Jackson from Nashville had over 200 amateur fights.
Yeah, I just think what you got to be careful of is whoever your matchmaker is, you got to make sure you're not pairing somebody up that's had 200 bouts against somebody that's had 5 bouts.
That is very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Mr. Hammonds, as the Tennessee representative, what are some of the things that you do in that position?
Well, that's what I'm about to find out. I've never done this position before. They chose me, so I'm kind of digging in now and kind of learning what I do right now. Is what I'm trying to do. I've got Kevin Walker, who's world respected also, and has been a promoter.
Mr. Hammonds, you've owned you've been part of ownership of a large gym here in town. How many students do you have?
We right now have about 270 students.
Nashville MMA has been around since
2002.
Okay.
Kevin Walker is one of our licensed officials also. I've worked with him at quite a few fights that he's officiated at here in Nashville.
Jeff, let me, if I may just ask kind of a general question that I've never understood is, from the amateur standpoint, you know, we have, in amateur boxing, we have one sole sanctioning authority in the United States of America. One. For amateur boxing. My question is, why is there a need for so many different sanctioning authorities for amateur MMA? Help me understand that.
Because
Anybody?
people can't agree on, people have problems with some of these sanctioning bodies, and when they have a problem with the sanctioning body, they have no other alternative to go to another place if they think they're being dealt with wrongly. And honestly, the MMA sanctioning bodies are not as organized as amateur boxing organizations, and may not have the process to keep things completely even keeled would be the word. So I think it gives, right now basically ISKA is doing almost every show in the state. I know Bernard Robinson, the one he's doing in Nashville, he's going to do with the IKF, his kickboxing, but almost, I don't think there's been another show in the last year, maybe last 2 years, by anybody but ISKA. So I think the other sanctioning bodies, WKA and IKF, they really don't have the people here in the state locally for people to deal with. So I think that's one thing they were looking for, is some people have been talking about this. I know Commissioner Hanna had heard to talk about this too. There was people looking for another alternative.
I personally have, regardless of whether or not it's Kick or whoever, I think it would be healthy for us to always have at least a couple of good resources to go to. As good of the job that ISKA does, and I'm sure will continue to do, I don't think in the spirit of good, fair-hearted competitiveness that it certainly wouldn't hurt to have, another good resource to fall on. Chairman Smith, I think also if you think about boxing has been around since the dawn of time, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you would have asked somebody what that was back in 92 or 3, they would look like you had two heads. So I think it just kind of came on the scene by storm, and so now you got all these grappling tournaments and MMA, and it's just I think everybody tried to get their hand into the pot at the same time, and as a result you've got to your point, a number of regulating authorities.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, certainly I would, in this case, defer to Steve, you, and obviously Jeff, and maybe some of my other fellow commissioners that have a lot more experience, knowledge from the MMA side than what I would have with regard to where we're at with this issue.
Let me give you, let me read something a little bit to you right here. It's a letter I got from Kick International about this national and international championship that they've got coming up in Las Vegas. And what this does, it gives our amateur fighters in Tennessee something more than just going to fight at the local fight and win a little medal or something. This gives them the chance to become the Tennessee champion or Tennessee representative, and then to go to a U.S. championship, and if they win that, to compete for the national championship in Las Vegas. So rather than just have that goal of, well, I'm going to keep fighting here in Nashville at RFC, twice a year until I can get to that next level. This gives them something where they can actually go forward and be a amateur champion. And like you said, Joe, maybe never even strive to be a pro champion, but stay at this amateur level and have a higher goal than just be the local tough guy. And it says,
I like it.
It says, in May of this year, the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation announced that Las Vegas, Nevada will be the site of the first international invitational with over 40 member countries participating in the World Championship of Amateur Mixed Martial Arts. The World Championships will be held July 2014 and coincide with the Las Vegas UFC Fan Expo, drawing the most talented amateur athletes from around the world. The USA Nationals, also to be held in Vegas this year, will qualify the best USA MMA athletes for eligibility in the World Championships. So this is, I think they're trying to kind of mimic the model that you guys have set up in boxing that works so well, to let them have that bigger goal as an amateur.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
So,
One question.
yes, ma'am.
How would this affect, if we do approve another sanctioning body, how does that affect if we move forward with legislation regulating amateur?
Then at that point, if we decide to regulate amateur, then, they can bring sanctioned bodies in if they want to, but they will all be under our direction. We'll still have, say so in anything, if they will no longer have to use a sanction body, but if they can, they want to. If they want to, they can. So there's some like in North Carolina, Virginia, who bring in the ISKA so they can still establish IKA champions. And people may want to do that even if we were to take over amateur regulation. They may want to bring in UMMAF so they can establish Tennessee champions through them so that they could compete in Las Vegas.
Send us copies of that letter you got?
Yes, yeah. They emailed me this in a letter about Waco, and I'll just forward the whole email, everything to you, so you can see what came with it and the 3 letters that I got.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Is there any other questions from?
Can I ask you, are y'all a 501c3 not-for-profit? Okay, I just want to make sure I had the right one. Thank you. That's it.
So, Mr. Scudder, the standard protocol from here at this point, are we in a position to take a vote today?
I believe so, if the commissioners are comfortable. I don't really see any other criteria that I need to make y'all aware of as far as what they're required to have or what have you. I think it's just, as long as y'all are comfortable with them, you can go ahead and vote today.
Is that so? They're just simply asking for sanctioning authority for amateur events in our state.
That is correct.
Okay.
I said another way, Chairman Smith, I think it's, isn't it that they're just asking for the Tennessee Athletic Commission to recognize Kick International as one of our sanctioning bodies.
So
Right.
Kick would be their kickboxing arm, and UMMAF would be their MMA arm.
This could be silly, but how many others do we recognize?
3.
Okay.
And we originally have one.
Really only heard of one.
Isn't there 4 others? I've got USA Boxing, ISCF, ISKA.
ISCF and IKF are the same thing, and ISCF is their MMA arm, as UMMAF is their MMA arm. So IKF and ISCF are the same one, and ISKA does MMA and kickboxing, and WK does kickboxing, and then USA is separate. Yeah, they do all the boxing. USA Boxing does all the boxing in the state.
Jeff, before we have a call for the question, and at the risk of being out of order, Ed, let me ask if I would be out of order to ask the question from our executive director what his recommendations are with regard to this issue.
That would be an appropriate question to ask if you wanted to know that.
Okay, Jeff, what is your recommendation with regard to this issue?
The sanctioning body subcommittee, they told me a couple of years ago for me to go through everyone that applies to be recognized by the state, and to kind of cull them and only bring the most worthy ones forward. And that's why I have not brought any forward until now. because this is the only other one that I've dealt with that I feel is worthy of recognition by the state of Tennessee. Like I said, I've actually done business with Frank Babcock since 1982, and I worked for him as an official, and he always did a great job, very organized, and I've known Sean Hammond and Kevin for years also, and they're also both very qualified. So I would feel comfortable recommending Kick International and UMMAF to be recognized by the state of Tennessee, where some of the other ones I've been issued I have not brought forward because I did not feel comfortable recommending them.
So I call for the question.
So, would someone like to make a motion to recognize Kick International as a regulating authority for the state of Tennessee, Tennessee Athletic Commission for amateur?
I'll make a motion.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Bass. Do we have a second? Dr. Penn
Got
has.
a second?
We've got a second from
Okay.
Dr. Penn. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Congratulations, gentlemen.
What would be the starting date for them to be able to start sanctioning, possibly the first of the year, or?
I would think we would need to possibly issue them a professional letter on our vote today and make sure they have something in hand for proof from our body.
Yep.
So I think we need to, reference today's meeting and make sure.
I think the first of the year sounds
For you all.
good. Don't, right? I mean,
First of the year?
Yes.
Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Scudder? Okay.
I didn't quite catch exactly what you said.
That they should receive a letter,
Receive a letter.
and
Okay.
that also that whether it would actually their recognition would start on January the 1st of 2014.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to thank you all for coming. I know I see you all on social media and things, and I want to thank you all for all. Very active, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
All right. Okay, so back to the agenda. We are kind of hopping around. Yes, ma'am.
Subject of sanctioning bodies, so I know for the future. So do we have a limit of sanctioning bodies or people that we would sanction? No, we do not.
There is not a limit, but if we get a whole lot of them, it's going to be very hard to keep up with them and
Can I
keep track of
suggest that in
things.
the future we consider that and/or create a list of maybe 5 or 6 things that we think they should have in addition to being international, so that in
We have requirements that we require of them,
that's what I mean.
but it's not they're not requirements that are like in the law or in the rules. They're just requirements that we have that I will talk with them with. I don't have a list of it in front of me. Like they have to have an ambulance there, they have to have a licensed doctor there. We have a list of things like that we require the sanctioning bodies to maintain their recognition by the state. And if they don't follow these bylaws that we set up for them, not bylaws, but procedures, policies we set up for them, that they can lose their recognition. But that's nowhere in a rule or in a law.
I just mean in the future, like as the sport grows, perhaps we have 10 new applicants and maybe they only have 10 people involved in their organization. Is that enough for us to sanction? Common sense may say no, but it may be beneficial to have for commissioners in the future just a reference of what we would consider worthy. Does that make sense?
I got an email from an organization like in Carolina the other day, and they're starting and they're regulating just there. They want to start regulating here. Well, they're a statewide organization, so they're not internationally recognized. So that would preclude them.
Well, let me say it this way, because that's a valid, I was sitting there listening, I'm thinking that's a valid concern. But right now, personally, I take comfort in allowing
Yeah, Jeff to make the
Jeff to make
Yes,
screen.
of course.
Have the filters in place, and then we
Right.
just trust his judgment. As long as we got that trust, which I certainly do, It's just one less thing I gotta worry about. But I think it's a valid point. If we ever get to the point to where you move states or whatever, I think it'd probably be prudent to put something concrete together, and otherwise.
And I trust it, which is why I was able to vote today. But, I like to vote with information too.
I like what you said about the limit, like maybe 5 at the most or something.
Per year, even. I mean, just.
The thing is, we've got, as of today, we have 3, and really only one of them is doing business. The IKF is going to do a show, like I said, this year, but it's the first one they've done in probably at least 2 years, I would think.
Maybe that would be one of the things, that if they're not active for a certain period of time either, that falls off until they
Right.
increase their activity again.
Well,
I mean, all these things seem.
What happens is they don't have the infrastructure here like ISK does, and now like Kick will have with these gentlemen. Since they don't have the infrastructure here, the promoters have to fly people in from other states, and it's just a cost thing.
Yeah.
Where Anthony already has the infrastructure here, he's got like a couple of other representatives, and they can do like 3 or 4 shows in one night because he's got representatives here in the state. Where WKA, Brian Crenshaw wants them to fly him in, but Steve Fossum does have a representative in Alabama now that's coming up for that show in Nashville.
And charges outrageous fees. I think the ISKA is very. 250 or something to go out, not even. That's some of the concerns I think we need to be prudent about, because we certainly don't want to approve somebody and then all. That's definitely a concern of mine. I would not like to give approval to.
Playing
one
devil's
thing.
advocate though, wouldn't they, if they priced themselves out of business, wouldn't they conceivably go out of business?
That's what I was about to say. This exactly what this gives you is, say the ISKA raised their prices and it's going to cost them that $1,000 plane ticket to bring somebody in from the IKF or WKA. Well, now they've got someone else. They don't have to be stuck with. They've got another option. I have to be stuck with the huge prices.
Yeah, that's true.
A little competition.
I just wanted to raise that as something to keep in mind as things grow. And I mean, certainly being sanctioned by us and the state is worthy to them to be able to promote it that way. So I just want to keep in mind that we're, making the recommendations or requirements so that it equals, them getting the benefit of it, I guess.
And I try to spot check amateur shows. I don't, I go to so many pro shows. I think this calendar year we have scheduled for this calendar year. But I try to go to amateur shows from time to time. I may not stay for the whole show, but I try to go back, spot check them, go in the back, especially around the Memphis area, and occasionally here in Nashville. I don't actually make it out to East. I spot check the ones in Memphis and Nashville anyway.
Okay, so, are there any other old business topics? Granted, that was more or less new business, but,
This is something that we discussed a long time ago, and there was never a vote taken on it.
thank you, gentlemen.
And that was, thank you very much. The amateur insurance, at one time it was stated that it was the commission's desire to make amateur and professional insurance levels the same. And what we decided to do was put off the vote to raise the amateur to 25 until after the pro was dropped to 25. And at that point, we were going to take a vote and see if you wanted to raise the amateur to 25 so they would be the same. Why would they be different, pro and amateur? But then we never took the vote after it went into effect. So I just brought that up. That's why I put it on the agenda, because I knew we had never discussed whether to raise the amateur from 20 to 25.
This happened immediately after our vote, or what's involved?
I would
in-
give them some months till, because some people have probably already.
But it's not rules or statutes or anything like
yeah,
that.
something.
Okay.
I would say like January 1st if you did decide to do that. But like I said, it was brought up before. The commission voted to put it off until after it went into effect.
What are the values again? And I can make a motion.
It's it's 25 for professional, and right now our requirement for the sanctioning bodies is that they require 20 for amateur. And at one time, it was brought up, should we make them equal and bring the amateur up to 25 too? Now, I've always thought there was a very small difference between 20 and 25, but a promoter recently brought up to me that there is a good bit of difference in cost between 20 and 25. So it is going to cost the amateur promoters quite a bit more to go from 20 to 25. Just to let you know, that is one consideration. That we don't price the amateur guys out, but if it's the same, you're also going to get more pro fights if the cost is almost the same.
I think, if I recall, that one of the reasons that we hit this so-called roadblock is because of that very reason.
Right.
Actuarially, the cost, I remember it going up fairly significantly.
Right.
And of those claims that are submitted, they're catastrophic typically.
Right.
So it's like, do you price yourself out of business for
Yep.
something that's really not even meaningful
exactly right.
in the overall spirit of
Because your
$1 million
typical claim
claim.
is for like, getting a cut sewn up or something.
Yeah.
Go in the emergency room, get a cut sewn up. It's usually they're in place, it's gonna be a drop in the bucket on catastrophic ones, whether it's 20 or 25. So the amount of claims that are between 20 and 25 are gonna be minimal. So it would just be whether you wanted to make them the same.
Was there any administrative gain from making them equal? I mean, I can't remember why we were even.
Just so that we were
Just a
saying, why
match.
why would amateurs have less than pro?
Yeah.
And would it encourage more people to stay amateur promoter if they paid less? Would it encourage more people to turn pro if it's going to be the same? All there was to it. It's I don't think you're going to have a lot of claims between 20 and 25.
How much difference was it cost?
But when we checked on this, it wasn't a whole lot of difference. No, it wasn't. The big jump was around 30 or 35, I think. But it just came to my attention recently, in the last 2 weeks, the 3FC, their insurance had gone up significantly, almost doubled, from like $2,100 to like almost $4,000. The company bought it. So, and they were talking about the difference that's going to be between the amateurs and the pros. It was a huge difference. Now, I suggested another company. They tried it, and they got it way down to about what they've been paying before. But with the company they were using, it was a big jump from 20 to 25. But when we checked them all out and we had all those prices, the old insurance, it wasn't a big jump. That's before they made this price gouge or whatever.
And, skepticism.
Awesome. Everything's cost them
and,
so much money right now.
But I do think we did our due diligence when they came and
Wasn't at the time. Exactly right. Because people weren't throwing on pro fights just because of $50,000 insurance. Yeah. I think that's a good idea, because like I said, the prices have changed, and if you want me to, I'll do some research, and I'll find out what the jump is from 20 to 25 before we put this on, and then I can bring it in the next meeting, and you can look at it again then and decide.
Hate to keep putting it off, but I think that's a great.
I think with the insurance changes, I think that's a good idea, because like I said, when we checked it before, it was almost nothing, the difference, but now it's gone up. So I think that's a good recommendation.
Okay, any other old business?
Exact same position in May. Same thing is gonna come up next May. They're gonna sunset us for the next year. So we have to at least be moving in the right direction.
What we were down to is what, I think the three things we came down. SK8 is making such a huge pot of money off our state.
Right, right.
That was on the table, and then the other thing was to
Wrestling.
wrestling. And then the is sending someone out.
If it's just a permit fee. One thing I found interesting in some of these papers that Mr. Scudder brought to us is one of the states on their permit fee, and we can establish permit fees in rulemaking, not in legislation. One of these states charges a percentage for a permit fee. So they get a percentage of the gate as their permit fee, and we can establish that in rulemaking. So what we could do is in amateur, like amateur MMA, we say we want to reestablish the amount of the amateur MMA as 4% of their gate with a minimum of $500. The minimum of $500 to be filed with your application. So they would file $500 with the application, and then if they had more than that, they would send that to us. And then we wouldn't have to regulate them at all, because all we would be changing is the permit fee.
I see what you're saying, that's actually what I'm saying.
If we don't have anybody there, how can we trust them? But at least we're getting the minimum of $500 there instead of $50.
Then are we gonna actually shoot ourselves in the
We will lose some. Yeah.
they would be
Now, if we just did that permit fee, they'd pay them too, because they would just pay us the permit and they'd pay the ISK.
That's what I thought you were saying,
Yeah.
which I like because it keeps us out of having to drive to
Exactly.
E-Town up in
So
East
it'd be
Tennessee.
no cost, just more revenue. Well, this was on wrestling, actually, not amateur MMA, and it was I believe it was Louisiana, wasn't it? Ed, did you give me two different sheets for It's Alabama. Here it is. An event permit fee will be calculated by the commission. Event permit fees shall be calculated at the rate of 5% of gross receipts from ticket sales to the professional wrestling event. For television and broadcast, event permit fees shall be calculated at 3% of gross receipts from television and broadcast revenue for the first 1 million and 1% of the next 2 million, capped at 50. So it's part of their event permit. It's not like a tax. They have to pay the gate and the televised.
So how do you calculate that?
5% of the gate, 5% of the gate, and 3% of the first million of broadcast, 1% of the second million, and 1% of the third million, with a cap of 50,000 for just that's the same as our broadcast tax for MMA.
So they have a minimum coming in of $500.
They don't have a minimum. They don't have a minimum on theirs. I was suggesting the minimum and get the minimum on the front end.
Calculate that, I mean, you have so many promotions.
We'd have to have somebody there to count tickets.
Oh,
Yeah.
That
I mean-
creates you being in a
Yeah.
bad position of collecting money
That's
with
why you had-
hostile drinking people at the end of the night.
You'd have to have a minimum on there on those, because especially the small shows. Small shows, like now you might put some of those small wrestling shows out of business, but some of those wrestling shows probably need to be out of business because they do wrestling shows now like in community centers and was it Veteran of Foreign Wars places where they'll just have 60-year-old men in there throwing each other around on barbed wire and thumbtacks. Now I'd probably put those guys out of business, but those guys should probably be out of business.
People will just skirt us anyway, to be honest.
The FedEx Forum alone, I know.
Right.
But they're having such tough times.
Really?
Yes, they literally had the last event, they were saying, please. Will be skirted around the arena during, but your tickets are free.
I had no idea.
Yeah, so ticket sales are not that great. There are some
That's still a lot of seats compared to the MMA shows.
Memphis,
Yeah.
Mid-South Coliseum, it would have been okay, but
Yeah.
FedEx Forum, that's like puny. So personally, the one I like the best is WWE broadcasting fees.
Right now, we get nothing.
We get nothing, we could do both, but personally, I like the big chunk.
What do you
Afford a
think?
ticket.
What do you think the average ticket is for WWE? $35.
I would look it up, but I would say anywhere from 30 to 55.
Average of 40. That's $160,000 at 4,000.
Wrestling. They said, so basically, off. The state in Roanoke. That may be something of interest to him, and he would not. Out of the pressure cooker financially with our budget.
Talked to Todd yesterday at Kentucky, and he told me that 70% of the revenue comes from wrestling.
I would say probably. The regulating amateur as much. I like your idea that you brought up. It just scares me having so much trouble people going from amateur to professional now, and I don't want to burden them anymore. We're trying to make them.
So what if we just raised the permit fee in rules to $250, which would be wouldn't be a whole lot, but it'd be probably another $10,000 a year coming in, and then in wrestling we went after the gate fee, and what I had looked at in most of the states, it looked like they just did the gate fee and didn't do the broadcasting. But if you think we should go after both, or just the broadcasting, at least. What if I know I've talked to people in wrestling who told me that they like regulation. The old TNA guy, he came to one of our MMA shows and he said he wished we did regulate, because he said what it does do is it puts those small organizations out of business, that gives them a black eye when somebody gets hurt, or with bloodborne diseases now, and there's no blood testing or anything, and you've got people in these small shows bleeding on each other. It's they're cutting each other with themselves with razor blades and stuff, so they'll bleed in the show. With
I don't know how they would, all those boys on steroids though, and all that stuff, and very well known. And
How do you think that Senator Watson would think of this proposal on wrestling?
there's more.
Well, are you there? You hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Did you hear Commissioner Bass asked what you thought Senator Watson would think about regulation of pro wrestling?
Well, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. Professional wrestling is nothing more than entertainment. And I think we would all agree with that, wouldn't we?
Yes.
Wouldn't we do that?
Yes.
I really don't think Senator Watson would care one way or the other. Now he is a big wrestling guy.
Right.
And when all this was originally written, his vision was that we were going to come in and raise a lot of money, and the extra proceeds that we raised would go in to support collegiate, NCAA wrestling, which is an entirely different animal than professional wrestling. Okay, I
Yes.
think we all on that, don't we?
I think you're exactly right. I think it's just like NCAA wrestling and high school wrestling that Senator Watson's involved with. I've never heard of him being involved in professional wrestling. I think
No.
Jerry Lawler would be more the roadblock
Yeah.
on pro.
I think he'd be just like us, and he just sees that as entertainment, and that's what it is. But interestingly, Jeff, Thursday night, December 5th, here in Chattanooga, there's a big wrestling event that's going to be nationally televised. They've sold 10,000 tickets already in a 12,000 seat arena. And it's some kind of pay-per-view event.
That's incredible.
You know what? It's on December the 5th, and I forgot who it is, but some big-time wrestling thing that's going to be here in Chattanooga. But I just thought to myself, my goodness, if we somehow, had our hands on that, that would create a lot of revenue. And again, that's where we have an issue. We got to turn over every rock we can turn over and try to find a nickel so we can survive.
You're exactly right, Joe. That'd be $300,000 to $400,000 in revenue they'd be bringing in from the gate.
Yep.
So
Yep.
if we got a percentage of that, that's a huge amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I ran across in doing research, Georgia regulates professional wrestling, but the WWE got themselves exempted out.
How?
They said
Obvious.
that the provisions wouldn't apply to any corporation that's registered with the Federal Securities Exchange Act and has total assets of not less than $25 million, which would be the WWE.
Why would they give them exemption? Because they make more money.
I don't know. That's just
Georgia to exempt them.
Well, because they got a buddy that's got a power up there in Washington D.C. somewhere.
That's amazing. So
that's in Georgia.
so we might have to create a job.
So we may be either wasting time or maybe this gives us some ammo on how to draft this language.
see, I don't see WWE on here.
They don't come right out and say WWE, but that's the only wrestling organization that's traded on the stock exchange. And see down, it's underlined down there at the bottom.
Oh, I see.
And and has assets of greater than 25 million.
That makes absolutely no sense at all.
Doesn't really.
That's who they were going
That's-
after.
Welcome to the world of drafting statute.
So they just got them to put that little provision in there where, so you guys have to go out and regulate little bitty wrestling people, but not the big ones, huh? That's amazing.
I think for pro wrestling, we should do both broadcast and try the gate and just see how it works. And if they don't report accurately or something, at least maybe they report some. So that's what I think for that. Jeff, did you say you recommend instead of going to 500 to increase the permit, you suggest going to 250?
Well, 250 is
increase?
what we had, Commissioner Bast brought up at our last meeting. That was the amount that she brought up. And I just,
What is it now? Nothing?
it's 50. It's 500 for pros and 50 for amateur.
Oh, yeah, 250. I like
And so 250 is right there in the middle, so.
That's what I propose.
Didn't think we did we?
No, we had to bring that in for the rules meeting. That'll be part of it.
Yeah, if we're gonna add that to the rules, I mean, I can make that part of the rules hearing that we're gonna have in February, if y'all vote to do that, but I would probably need to go ahead and get a vote on that.
So is the gate fee 3% or 4%?
It's 4% for the gate, and the broadcast is 3% of the first million, 1% of the second million, 1% of the third million, with a cap of 50,000 for broadcast.
That like the going rate
That's-
that they don't get more than 50,000?
Right, that's most states, they have a cap of 50,000.
Okay. Is there a cap for gate fee?
There's not a cap for gate fees.
Okay.
So we've got, before I wrap this up in a motion, we got two items on the table. One is to raise the amateur permit fee to $250. Currently it's at $50, and then we're talking about the gate and the broadcasting fees. Was there a third?
I think that may require legislative change,
Which
the second one.
The pro wrestling will definitely return.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I was just talking
only thing
about
we
what
can-
we need to approve today so that you can draft this as far as the rule.
as far as, well, now I can't do any rules until the statute's changed on the gate
Wrestling.
fees. Or the
So,
wrestling or any of those
right now we
things.
have no standing with wrestling at all, so really that's what we want to work on in legislation.
Yeah.
But in
Then we'll
rules,
have
we
to
can
have a rule,
change
right.
amateur MMA.
On the 250, so he can go on and do his.
Go ahead
Gotcha.
and roll that in.
Okay.
I mean, and if y'all decide that's what you want to do, I can go ahead and get started
We
on
can
that.
get the ball rolling.
But I can't,
Nothing on wrestling.
Yeah.
it's not anything official until there's a statutory authority to do it.
Jeff, when we were thinking about ways, I just want to make sure, was there anything else that we were like, we don't have to make a lot of changes to go ahead and enact? I remember this raise the permit fee, but was there anything else that we said we could just do now with a rules change or with deciding to do it? I just don't remember. I just want to.
Not that I remember, Steve Myshak is the one that brought that up when he was sitting in, I think it might have been the meeting before last. He said that you can do in rules, so it'd be a lot easier than the legislation part, where to take over regulation of amateur, we'd have to do that legislatively. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can do. Ed, can you think of any permits are the only thing that we can set in rules, right?
Yeah. 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 Gross admission, gross receipts, and broadcast fees are all set out in statute.
Now, the only other thing you could do is, on the amateur MMA, say, you could set it like Alabama did on wrestling. You could say, you need to bring us 4% of the gate with a minimum of 250.
Legislation. So right now in MMA, what's our gate fee for that? What do we charge the gate for amateur MMA? Right?
We have
4%,
nothing.
right?
We don't get
You talking
any
about pro?
amateur.
Professional.
Professional, we get 4%,
Professional, we
but
get
amateur,
4.
we don't get any.
And what have we thought about that?
I think the way to do that, because to be able to charge them a gate tax, that would have to be done legislatively.
For
But-
amateurs.
For amateurs.
Yeah.
But the way to do it would be to establish it in the event permit, like Alabama did on the wrestling. Say, you could put that in rules. Amateur event permits will be 4% of the gross ticket sales and 3% if they have broadcast. Because some of these amateur shows are starting to broadcast their shows.
So that's different than just raising it to
Yeah.
250.
Right. That would be with a 250 minimum. That's another possibility.
I would suggest that then. I'm just trying to make sure we do everything that doesn't have to be done legislatively. And then, obviously next, figure out what we want to ask for legislatively, but how do the other commissioners feel about that? Asking for the minimum at amateur MMA for the event permit to be based on ticket sales. I think I said that right. Or a percentage of with a minimum of 250.
The greater of 250 or 4%, is that something like that?
Bar fights and down the road fights, you're gonna have.
That's what I was saying about the other thing. I mean, they might do that, and then if they don't pay, that's one thing, but you'd at least get the 50, and if they were honest and upstanding and there wasn't a scuffle, then you would get more.
We still wouldn't actually be regulating these guys. We would just have to have our ISKA or IKF people give us, their guess of how many people, their estimation of how many tickets were sold.
So I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Baskin, and then my position is just to ask. Because what it hurts to ask. And then if we find that it's too much of a problem or something, we say, we're not getting anything, it's not worth it, so let's take that out and just stick with the 250, or let's raise it at that time, but I say ask. That's just my.
That's something we would put in this legislation, or is that something that we could do in rules?
If we wrote it just the way it is in this Alabama rules for wrestling, well, I think we could put it in rules. If you just write it this way, an event permit fee will be calculated by the commission. Event permit fee shall be calculated at 5% of the gross rates of ticket sales to amateur MMA events.
I think we may have to be really careful about that because it says they have to obtain the permit prior to conducting the event.
That's
So-
why you would say a minimum of 250 due with filing of application.
And it also says that we can prescribe without limitation the requirements and fees for obtaining the permit. So it might be a situation where, like you said, we could do 250 on the front end and then say the rest of it is
File within 14 days.
filed. I mean, that's,
And it's a rules change?
That's a rules change.
that could be done with a rule change, I believe. I'm not,
The way you read that, without limitation or limit, or was it, say it again?
yeah, without limitation. We can adopt rules that prescribe without limitation the requirements and fees for obtaining the permit. That's a little,
It was broad.
yeah, it's a little, that's kind of a strained interpretation. I can't guarantee that that would fly.
You can't?
No, I mean, certainly the 250, raising it to 250 on the front end, we could do. I mean, that's
If somebody asking for 250 or a percentage.
because it has to be, or it says it's got to be issued prior to conducting the event, and so we don't know how much the gate's going to be until after the event.
Does that mean all business related to the event permit has to be
Paid on the front end.
finished?
Paid on the front end.
Yeah,
Well, you could at least require the 250 on the front end, though, with filing of application.
Would our exposure be just simply, should someone want to challenge us on this, could come back and potentially say, well, this is ambiguous, so.
Yeah, I think how it would, if somebody killed it, it would either be somebody at the Attorney General's office saying, no, you can't do it this way, or one of the reviewers after me saying, no, you can't do it this way, or the Government Operations Committee could say, no, we don't think that's a fair way of doing it. Yeah.
Question. How far in advance of the event is the permit obtained, and is there an idea of how many ticket sales there are before the event, so that that percentage could be calculated before?
Now, in a place that does like Ticketmaster or something like that, you can get a readout the night of the show, and they'll tell you exactly what it is.
Is that when you give out the permits typically, the night of the
No,
show?
no.
Yeah, how far in advance?
They're supposed to do it 30 days ahead of time,
Okay.
but often it's not done 30 days ahead of time. But yeah, on the front end, it would just be strictly a guess. But again, you could say with the 250 minimum filed with your event permit application.
I was trying to get around to having calculated.
There's a huge walk-up.
Now I'll jump in here.
Yeah.
What would concern me a little bit about having them pay that minimum up front, I almost, by doing that, we set ourselves up and set whoever the promoter may be up for a greater possibility of corruption. And here's why I say that. I'm not so sure that we would always get an honest head count. I'm just afraid we'll hear a lot. Well, I've already paid you $250. That's what I owe you. You know, instead of them coming back after the event and after they've got their numbers to say, yeah, I paid you $250. I owe you $500 or whatever.
Yeah,
So
that mimics what Commissioner Bass
They
was
have
saying.
to pay that minimum up front is a good idea. And maybe I'm wrong, but that would be my concern.
It sounds like we're not ready to move ahead on the part of the percentage, if I'm interpreting that.
Let's just set the 250, and if I think maybe that's, if he says there could be a problem with it, we don't want to put that ahead and then end up not having anything. So maybe we should put the 250. I don't think we'll get any problems with the 250. Do you?
I don't believe so.
So maybe we should just. That's not going to be a huge difference. You know, $250 on 40 shows, but you know, that was another $10,000. Helps.
At one point, the legislature had told the reg boards, don't come up here trying to raise the fee. I mean, they just said that flat out, don't try to raise your fees. Now, that's been 2 years ago. And so that may not be, you know, they may not feel so strongly about it now, but at one time, the word came down, don't come up here trying to raise your fees. You just need to live, you just need to live
Yes,
with
sir.
what you got.
I'll jump in one more time, and then I've got to check out. I've got to be on a matter down at juvenile court. And I hate to have to run, but again, I'm just afraid that based on a lot of our discussion today, we're still kind of headed down the path of, you know, trying to pick up a few dollars by doing this and raising this fee or regulating this or change this, and that'll generate a few more dollars. In which is true, but still, we got to have the home run.
Yes, sir.
It would seem to me, and I'll am open to stand corrected, that somehow, somebody, maybe that's your job, Jeff, I don't know, but somebody's got to be selling our state to these promoters, to these people that want to do events, that want to do shows, the great opportunity it is to come to the state of Tennessee. I don't think that's our job as a commission, as a body. Maybe that's your job. I don't know. But that's the key. We got to get some big events coming to our state. We don't have to worry about raising the fee $10 a year, raising the fee $50 there.
Yes, sir.
Don't have to worry about that. We got to have some marquee events come to our state. That is key. And until we do that, we're going to keep, walking around like a little turtle trying to get to the finish line and find $5 here, $10 there. And in a year from now, find ourselves in the same situation we're in today. We got to find some big events, in my opinion.
Yes, sir.
I got to check. I'm sorry. Jeff, if you were to need me for a vote or something, I won't be able to answer my phone, but if you'll text me, I'll leave my phone on vibrate and try to step out of juvenile court. Maybe they won't lock me up down there.
Very good. All right, well, we will have a vote for a new chairman. Do you want me to text you? Could he vote by text?
I can do that. Just text me. I'll keep my phone on my hip.
I'm not sure about that because he needs to be able to hear everything that's going on, I think it'd be pretty dangerous for him to vote
Okay.
by text. I think that could, somebody
We'll
could-
text you, and if you can step out at the point of the vote, you can, and if you can't, we'll just continue.
Just carry on. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chairman Smith.
All right, Steph. Thank you.
I mean, on the more successful amateur shows, I'm just thinking about like Ed's shows, that, we're talking usually what, 700-800 people?
Let me tell you, V3 in Memphis shows like 6 months ago. I think Melissa may have been at the show too.
Gotta go to one of those, Hannah. It
I
is
got
so
there.
good.
There was
Best
people
damn
lined
thing
up
I've
out to the
seen.
parking lot to get in.
It
How many-
is-
how many-
It is the best match-made event I am at. I don't know who his matchmaker is.
Chan.
They are so well matched. I'm telling you, it is the best.
You
fight
walk
I
in
have
and it looks
seen,
like a
except
huge
when we were
professional
at the
show.
FedEx Forum.
Giant screens.
Oh,
And
it's awesome.
it's unbelievable.
That's
And
3FC?
it's
V3.
V3 in Memphis.
He's
V3.
taking out billboards now.
Yeah, billboards.
We started a franchise food company called Ultimate Foods. It's I'm using
Grown into working families. This franchise they have is growing. You just want to. And so they deliver packaged foods that they started off fighters and training, and now they're bringing it to your house, delivering it.
To
He's a
Dr.
go-getter.
Penn's point, like, and I appreciate what Chairman Smith's saying, but I mean, we got a lot of amateur MMA events, and on average, if we're raising, that's a potential between $800 and $1,200 per show that we would be raising
With a percentage.
with a percentage.
I wish the chairman could have heard my response to what he said too, but I remember that we've discussed this and am like, though marquee events are great, we also need to make some things that are sustainable, because what happens if we get marquee events this year and then next year we don't? I like all
That's
of this.
exactly what's going to happen.
I agree
Yes,
with you.
but we've discussed this before, that we can't rely on marquee events because so far they haven't happened. So yes, we want them and they would be great, but we also need to make these smaller changes that would decrease the deficit and sustain us.
You're
I guess that's
exactly
why I'm
right.
trying to push, gate fee. Let's ask for what we can ask for. So
So we may have to be able to get the gate fee, we may have to regulate amateur MMA. And if we do that, like Commissioner Bass said, there's going to be times when it's going to cost us more to regulate them than we're going to bring in. So we have to establish a minimum, and then we're going to have to, in Memphis and Nashville, these areas, Jackson, we've got inspectors, and I could just send one person there to do it. But I've had a hard time getting people in East Tennessee. I've had 4 or 5 people tell me they were going to do it, and then right now they're making more money, helping the ISK and stuff like that, than we would be paying them.
this is
so they
what
end
do you
up
need?
not coming over.
Official, because I came from East Tennessee. That's where I started with boxing at least.
Right,
So I know
right.
at least some people,
Right.
not the greatest, Ace Miller, he passed away, but I know at least
Oh, passed
some
away.
people.
Ace Miller passed away.
That's who nominated me for this.
Wow.
That's how I got started in all of, boxing and MMA and everything. But we're talking about inspectors that you need.
I can help you out with that too. Or whatever, right up the road from me on
Yeah.
Highway 64. That's a franchise of
Yeah, it's one of his franchise, Chad Chilcutt, pays him a percentage or whatever to be.
He's the owner of Premier Mixed
Yeah.
Martial Arts, and he's excellent. He's always very supportive.
I've talked to him on the phone a few
He
times.
might be able to
And
help you.
and the thing is, we don't want to get people that are too involved with the team, because I've had some really prominent trainers tell me they wanted to be, but all those trainers in East Tennessee, there's a huge rivalry between those trainers. I mean, huge. They don't like each other. And if I were to take one of those guys that's really involved with one of those teams as an inspector, well, the other teams would be thinking, they all think everything's fixed, so that they would be thinking that other inspector is giving the other guy some kind of advantage somehow.
Recommendations
So-
from folks.
So I can't really use those guys that are established with teams, because and very good guys that I trust completely from there have told me they would love to be an inspector. I say, and I'll ask guys from the other team, and they'll say, no, we can't.
Well, FYI, I'm working on something. We need to work on this together. I do not know, because I've not
Right, I talked to Brian the other day.
Well, slow it down on that conversation. We might want to backtrack a little bit because, you know, Brian's not well liked by you. Brian's hard to deal with. And maybe we need to take another footing.
Well, I like Brian, but just Brian's hard to deal with sometimes.
Well, until we get his dollars out of him that he
Yeah.
owes the state right now,
Yeah.
I'm not too supportive. But how did Rampage do on November 2nd?
It didn't take place. What happened was Tito Ortiz fractured a bone in his neck and had to drop out of the fight. So what happened is Rampage has got a new opponent, and it's moved back to November 15th. It's Joey Beltran, who is not as a dangerous an opponent as Tito Ortiz. And so he's fighting Joey Beltran, and it'll be on Spike TV, actually. And after that, you know, I know James Toney is calling Rampage out everywhere.
Well, that's the fight that's getting all the hoopla that we started talking about, me and
He's just signed for a fight somewhere else. Yeah. It won't be his last fight.
That's his retirement fight to be in Memphis.
Okay, it's his warm-up fight. He's signed for a warm-up fight somewhere else.
But I think that we need to work on this letter together to Tim Bellator and tell Tim, I want it,
So
go for
do
it,
you
and it's
think-
Bellator would have to give him the permission to do it.
So you think the Tony fight would be better than the Jones fight? The Jones fight would probably sell more tickets if Jones and Rampage.
Some more tickets, but it would be great if we could get Jones like either.
Jones' retirement fight against Rampage, or have both of them on the card. Rampage.
would just keep his ass though.
And make him look bad. You don't want the old man retiring and getting his ass kicked in front of a Memphis crowd.
Here's the thing, in pure boxing, Roy Jones is probably the hardest to hit person. It's hard to catch him, and so if Quentin were to land a shot on Roy Jones, he would knock him out.
See what I mean?
But he would have a hard time catching him.
Be a better fight just because there's so much big rivals.
Yeah.
And check out this connection I found. Their start on, and they both have roots to.
I didn't realize Tony had fought at the New
Yep,
Days.
yep. Sure enough, they both have I guess either. So we need to push Tim a little bit and tell him how big it was. No, big fight.
Sorry, so yes for that, but when you said if we did the gate fee for amateur MMA, we would have to regulate, is that a necessity?
No.
Okay.
I like.
I'm just thinking if we raise fees, they're gonna look for us to do something in return rather than just raising fees.
What if it was something like that? All right,
I don't know, if we were to take gate fees, would they expect us to be regulating them?
Yeah, I think that somebody is going to, at some point, ask, what are they getting for their money?
Yeah.
You know, if we're giving you this amount of money.
that's like checking numbers, that the fighters are properly set up and all this kind of stuff, and
Regulation is what they're
possibly
getting.
not being there, but you could do everything outside of that to ensure a safe event.
Public safety and welfare.
Yeah,
Welfare and safety of the, what is it? That's what we have to.
public. Okay.
And is it normal for the folks up on the hill to be so disengaged from the regs folks? I mean, the folks on the hill want us to generate more revenue, and these folks don't want us to raise revenue. So like, conversation be had by someone from their department.
I think he's saying the people on the Hill told them not to raise the rates, right?
Yeah, it was the folks in government ops who, they review all the rules. Everybody, every commission, board, department that files rules, they have to go through government operations and reg boards at Commerce and Insurance who has, like ought to be raising their rates.
But in the spirit of providing regulation, this is a problem that we're having, or we're being asked.
I think, yeah.
The Hill is gonna make that ultimate decision.
I think the athletic commission's situation is a little unique, but I just wanted to make y'all aware of that edict had come down.
Yeah,
They
right.
didn't tell us that.
Yeah, if we don't have some big actions taking place and we don't have any more revenue coming in by May when they bring us up again, then we're gonna be in the very.
Include the
But if we don't have the
4% fee or no?
I don't know yet if that's a rules or a legislation, but we think it'd be safer to put legislation. Is that what I'm hearing?
We have to go call Alabama though, didn't we, and do some research on that before we take up the.
No, you said it to me, not to Jeff.
I'm sorry. We decided that
Jeff
already.
goes, we did.
I was confused there for a minute.
Jeff's like, I thought we
Well,
decided.
we looked at the Alabama thing, but when they were talking about the percentages, I think that was just the pro wrestling. I didn't see where they did the gate for the MMA. I could be wrong.
He was taking the wrestling at
I was thinking the
Alabama and
wrestling and
using
saying
that
we-
language
yeah.
for the
Right.
MMA. Now, what I said is, I'd love to take a vote on the 250 to increase our fee in rules, but before we do the percentage, let's ask Jeff to call Alabama and see what kind of honor system they have, what kind of fees are coming in for this 5%.
But see, again, that's from wrestling. I don't know that it compares. It's worth asking, but
Yeah,
I mean, it is different. It's wrestling, not amateur MMA.
yeah, the fees probably wouldn't, but see if they.
And so,
not getting it.
let me just play this out. So let's just say that successfully we now adopt the increased for amateur MMA. We come back at the next meeting and then possibly incorporate.
In that case, you would have to come up with a set of rules that incorporates both, and we could vote on it. When we
Yeah.
do our rules meeting.
We don't want to put it off for another rules meeting and change it to 250 and then end up doing it again at another rules meeting. I think to get it all now. Okay, and then we're going to start working on legislation for pro wrestling, gate fee and broadcast fees.
Gate and
Like
broadcast.
that's
Exactly
Commissioner
like
Bass is
MMA.
going to start.
Permit fee, a permit, the same we have for everything, a permit fee, a broadcast fee.
Do we ask them to get licenses for the wrestlers? Because Mississippi told me that at the first of the year, because theirs goes like ends the calendar year, they said that the WWE sends them licenses for their entire group of people. Like if they have 150 wrestlers under their group, the first of the year, they send in license applications for all 150 of them, so that whichever ones they choose to use at any time, they're licensed, they can go in. So they license that entire crew, whether they wrestle there or not. Of course, their fees are probably not as high as ours. It's probably like,
It'd be a lot more work for you to
Yeah.
license them, but I mean,
it's a lot of revenue there if you have 150 people at $75 a person.
Okay, so I would say maybe include that in the language of the legislation we're trying to draft.
You don't need a dilated eye exam. What we could do is have slightly less stringent ones, like say that you've had a physical exam in the last year instead of the last 30 days, that you've had a blood test in the last year on the day of wrestling. That way, that's really not as strict, and then they can just bring a copy of their exam, and hopefully at that age they're getting an exam every year anyway, right? It should be.
I like it. I like wrestling.
broadcast, unless I'm
I threw in
incorrect.
the permit just because.
Yeah, we had to have
of
a
your
permit.
Administrative, that
Yeah.
kind of covers Jeff's work.
Okay.
And we charge all the other folks.
So do we
Right.
charge them a $300 permit, just like we do pro MMA? Oh, after the fact? Yeah.
Yeah, we could set the amount.
So, like, yes, it's 300 for MMA
I
and
want
for.
the amount set in statute though,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah, a
So
minute
gotta
ago,
go
we said
back
500, but it's actually 300 for a permit for MMA and boxing, and it's, for pro MMA and boxing, and it's, $500 promoter's application. Yeah, I said 500 a second ago, but it's actually 300 is what they pay. I still think 250 is reasonable for amateur.
So in the statute, it will only say permit, gate fee, broadcasting fee. It won't have any amounts, is what you're saying.
Say, you'll say that same
Okay.
kind of thing you said about reasonable. Yeah.
The only other thing that we brought up was some kind of monies, and I know we just threw it in there, but I just don't want it to go away. We asked for some kind of monies from somewhere to make us work,
Gonna
remember?
get it. We were gonna get it.
Some amount.
Appropriation of from the
Yes,
general fund.
sorry, thank
yeah.
you for the language.
Hello? Hello? Hey,
I mean, I know we were just trying to think of all possibilities, but do we want to draft that or just leave that alone?
Do we just request that from the governor, or we request that from Commerce and Insurance? How do we go about doing that?
I don't know how that would work, because I've never seen it done before. That may have to be a legislative, administrative bill.
When Andy Foster was in Georgia, he told me that he was under the Secretary of State and not under like Commerce and Insurance. And he said if they needed more money to operate, he called the Secretary of State and said, I need more money to operate. And the Secretary of State just transferred money over to their funds for the public.
Was it Steve? Who was it that was here?
Steve Myshak.
Yeah, that's
He's-
here all the time, and he's like, well, if you ask that, then you're gonna bring up the fact that they haven't been charging you for these amount of things for a certain number of years, and it could be messy. And so if it's gonna be messy, fine, we'll have to bring it up. I just wanna make sure we had addressed all the things we talked about
He's
for
the
money.
Assistant Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance. He's basically the one that, he's right under the Commissioner. He's over the daily operating of everything.
We could just agree to table that. I'm just saying it was in the presentation and we discussed it, so.
We got lucky, Kyle got a phone call. We came over and got out of the room. Yeah, by the end of the month, yes.
That's traffic, but you don't have to deal with any of that crap.
Yeah. There's days when I was, it's an easy half hour each way, but if traffic's bad, it can be 45 each way.
I go down there sometimes.
I've got to get us back on track here, because I'm going to have to run here. So, and I know everybody else is busy as I am, so we need a vote. And so what I think I've heard is a vote on raising the amateur MMA permit fee from 50 to 250,
Yes.
right? That's, for purposes of an actual vote, that's all I have. The rest is going to have to be worked on behind, yes, sir.
But you have to vote on what you want them to work on. So I suggest you, all the things that Dr. Penn said, that we start working toward legislation, and to charge them a gate fee tax.
I'll make the first. I would like to make a motion for us to raise the permit fee for amateur MMA from $50 to $250 to be discussed at the upcoming rules meeting.
I second that.
Okay, would that be boxing and MMA?
That's just,
Just amateur MMA.
Amateur
We've
MMA.
got them, because we charge both
Yeah, but
under our rules.
yeah, but it says that they're accepted from it if they
Or
if-
501c3.
which they all are.
Yeah.
All the amateur boxing are. Now, we might want to put the word kickboxing in there too, because I say MMA and kickboxing.
Okay.
Well, you know what though, now that you're saying this boy here's a 501c3, so would they be exempt from paying us any fee?
Sanctioning body.
Yeah.
Now, that's another thing we could do. You know, most states charge,
Let me amend my motion. So I'm going to amend that motion
Register.
to include.
most states charge the sanctioning bodies
To register.
about $1,000 a year.
Yep.
And that's not much, that's 4,000 with the 4 of them, but that's extra money.
So I'm amending that motion to include amateur, MMA, and kickboxing.
Okay,
second that.
we've got a motion on the floor. We've got a second from Commissioner Bast. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like sign. So moved.
I would next like to make a motion that we begin work on legislation to regulate pro wrestling, to include collection of event permit fees, gate fees, and/or broadcasting fees.
All right, we've got a motion for, to begin work on legislation to regulate pro wrestling and to include permit, gate, and broadcasting fees. Do we have a second?
Do we want to set those fees as the gate at 4%, the broadcast at 3, 1, and 1, just like MMA?
Well, we were just discussing to leave that to the rules making. I thought not to include that in
That's
statute.
just the permit. You have to establish the fees in legislation for the gate and for the broadcast.
We'll use the same
but
that
the-
we have.
right.
4%, and then the
Exactly,
exact
exactly the
broadcast
same.
language, yep.
Right.
Yes. So that is the motion on the floor, is to begin work on the legislation to regulate pro wrestling, and to, as part of that, to include permit, gate, and broadcasting fees as reflected in, so which,
That'd be the same as in our laws.
okay,
For our
as
bill,
same as the
right.
original bill. Thank you. And so we have that motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Bast. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like sign. So moved.
I really do think that could be history, like it's going to come up.
But you know what
I
I will
made
tell
it.
you, y'all?
I made the motion.
I will tell you that I may need Steve Hanna or Dr. Penn to come help with a little lobbying up here on that one when we're up in committee some days, because that's
We've
going to be a
discussed it. I
better-
might have some extra time on my hands, so just teach
I need
me
a
how
little
and I will be
I need
there.
a little help knocking, because I got some really big, huge fireworks legislation
love
this year
it.
that's already wearing me out.
I would love
You'd be
to.
good at it, too.
I
Thank
think
you.
like,
Well,
if
I've
you
just
come up
told
a
her
day
I'm
and just say I'm
in my
commissioner and
own
go with me.
career
and-
is now in flux. You guys have seen that twice before in my 4 years here,
Well,
so.
if you could,
You guys
schedule
did
a-
great at that committee meeting. Both of y'all were great.
Well, I gotta raise my hand. I know exactly what Joe Smith was referring to about how we say things. And I know that comment was reflected. Simply because one of the people on the government ops, we had a surplus and where that surplus went. And I had to answer that. A lot of cluster in the beginning with our accounting. And you know, the department would charge us sometimes and not charge us sometimes. So, you know, the first year we couldn't get our handle around what. But it was you had to be there because it was the question I got asked. You know, it looked like I was throwing the department under the bus, but it was not, because the guy, whoever,
I didn't think
it was
anything you
Hardaway, or one of them said, how was the first year? And where did your profit go from that year? And I had to answer that. But Mr. Scudder's been wonderful, I must say, having you on board. Out in the audience, I was literally looking at y'all thinking y'all just gave my baby a black eye up here, because it was like, what are they doing to this pretty piece of legislation?
Pretty much.
Wayne was here for the first year. And,
Wayne's gone now.
Is he?
I told him, I said, just as we started to get along and not hook hooves every day, I said, now you're leaving me.
All right, any other business? for today's meeting?
I just texted Joe and told him we were about to, well, actually, it hit 10. I just texted him, told him we're about to vote on the chairman. I don't know if he'll be able to call in or not, because that's the next order of business, correct?
It is. I did have a question. Is that advisable with, we don't know who's going to be even reappointed yet, do we? And does that even matter?
Well, the only
I
person
volunteered to
reappointed,
participate. I haven't had that honor yet, and Dr. Fish was only in the position for.
the only person who's going to still be on is Joe Smith. So, and he can't be chairman again. He can't serve 2 consecutive terms. So it has to be one of you 3. And even though one of you's coming on, so.
Don't raise that hand too quick.
Say it again.
I wasn't volunteering for the chairman. I was thinking vice. Who's been chairman
I have.
once or twice, or
Just once.
you interested in that again? We're all here for the same amount of time.
Yeah, did you just express interest?
I didn't say chairman. I would, sure, but whatever you all think, or
Well-
vice chair. I'm happy to serve.
Well, then can we make a vote here?
Somebody makes a nomination and then you vote.
Okay.
Do we do vice chair first and then chair? Is that what we did before, or do we chair and then vice chair?
I don't think it really matters.
Okay. Just somebody make a nomination for one of the positions and then vote will come from there.
Okay. I'd like to nominate Dr. Penn to be
Chair,
considered for chairman.
I second that.
We've got a second.
And then you got to vote.
All right. Just as we would for any voting on so all those in favor of Dr. Penn being named the new chairman, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, like sign. So moved. Congratulations.
I'll raise my hand for vice chair with that. We'll put the girls in this.
I would like to make a motion to entertain naming Commissioner Bast as co-chairman, right? Is that what we use?
Vice chairman.
Vice chairman
Vice chair.
for the upcoming 12-month period, I suppose. Do we have a second?
I would like to second that.
All right, we got a second. All those in,
Well, I'd check and see if there are any other nominations, and then you need a motion.
today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Do we have to go back and do that for the other part?
Probably be cleaner for us to do that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for chairman? Okay. Yeah, so would someone like to move for the nominations to cease? All right.
Yeah, vote on that.
Okay, so all those in favor of seizing, or just seizing to entertain, for the motions to stop, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like sign? Okay, we're good on that. Now we are entertaining,
Now you got to vote on Dr. Penn again.
okay.
They keep you in track of these Robert rules though, don't they?
You see why I wanted you to do this today?
See why I didn't want it?
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to appoint Dr. Penn as chairman. All those in favor?
Joe's calling in now. Joe? Joe, can you hear me?
All over.
No, we just the vote.
Okay.
He can just vote.
Hello?
Joe,
Yeah.
Dr. Penn was just nominated. Dr. Penn was just nominated as chairman, and we're taking the vote right now.
Okay.
Steve,
Okay.
he's with us too. for the
Okay,
vote.
hey, Chairman Smith, we are voting right now. We've got a motion on the floor to nominate Dr. Penn as the new chairman. And so I would like to take that vote now. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like sign. It is so moved. So congratulations again. Okay, now we have a second vote, which is to for nominations to be entertain for vice chairman. And we have, before you called in, Chairman Smith, we had Commissioner Bast as, that was named as a potential vice, or co-chairman, vice chairman. So are there any other nominations? All right. Do I need to vote on a move to seize? Yeah, so we'll take a vote to move to seize any future nominations for vice chairman. Do we have a movement on the floor?
I make that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion and we got a second from Commissioner Bast. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Okay, so now we have we're to the point now of taking a vote on announcing Commissioner Bast as appointing her to vice chairman. All those, we have that motion on the floor, right? We have a second, which I suppose I could get a second, right? I'll second that. All those in favor of appointing Commissioner Bass as vice chairman, say aye.
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 All those opposed, like sign. So moved. Congratulations to you as well.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, is that all you need from me, Jeff?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay,
When does that take place?
Now. From the time this meeting ceases forward.
guess what that means?
What does
I'm
that
turning it over right now.
mean? Is there any other business we need to conduct before we close this meeting?
I make a motion that we close this meeting.
Second.
We've gotten a lot done today. I know it took us a long time, but we got a lot done today.
There's been a motion made and a second, so our meeting is adjourned.
Deal. Good deal.
Congratulations.
So much more done. There was a
Congrats.
small amount of
Don't
people
we
on
know?
this thing versus there's
That would have been a
9.
5-hour meeting.
It would have
I
been.
feel like my hands are so sweaty, we started getting
I look forward
Thank
to it.
you. We'll have a great 6 months, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Well,